Why was the armory so quiet, yet so heavy with judgment? Ashley Carter sat alone at her workbench, the smell of gun oil clinging to the air like a memory that refused to leave. The pieces of her rifle, bolt, receiver, barrel, were spread out before her in neat alignment. To her, this wasn't maintenance. It was meditation. Each pass of the cloth along steel, each twist of a screw, each careful inspection was a ritual that steadied her in a world where too much depended on chaos. But the silence didn't last. Boots, voices, laughter, the kind of laughter that wasn't about joy but about ownership of space, the kind that warned, "You don't belong here." "Well, would you look at that?" The voice filled the armory before she even looked up. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, tall, broad-shouldered and carrying the weight of years in the field, stood in the doorway, flanked by other instructors. Little Miss Perfect, polishing her toys again. Carter didn't respond. Not because she hadn't heard, because she had heard this before. Dozens of times. Every word, every tone, every smirk. Ignoring it wasn't weakness. It was control, and control was survival. "You know," Morrison continued, stepping further inside, "sometimes I wonder why we even let women handle these rifles, especially the long-range ones. This isn't just pulling a trigger. There's physics, calculations, endurance, hours of lying still in the dirt. It's not exactly suited to the fairest sex, is it?" The men behind him chuckled on cue. Their laughter was a wall, designed to push her back, to erase her presence. Carter slid the bolt into the receiver with a smooth, deliberate click. She still didn't look up. The silence was her shield. But silence can provoke. "Hey," Morrison barked, voice tightening. "I'm talking to you. The least you can do is acknowledge your superior officer." Finally she lifted her eyes, her gaze locked on his, steady, unflinching. "Is there something you need, Colonel? I'm in the middle of maintenance." The room shifted just slightly. His swagger dimmed under her calm reply, but only for a moment. "Just making conversation," he said, leaning closer over her workbench. "Sharing some professional wisdom. Tell me, what's the longest confirmed kill you've made in the field? Not on a range, in combat." 1,748 meters, she said evenly. "Helmand Province, 2010. For a moment, he faltered. Surprise flickered across his face before he smothered it. "Impressive for a woman," he muttered, straightening. "But let's be honest, you've never had to make the real shots, the ones that separate legends from the lucky." He turned to the others, ready to launch into another inflated story. "Gentlemen, did I ever tell you about Fallujah?" But the words died. Because another voice cut through the room. "What about 3,827 meters?" Silence, heavy, absolute. All eyes turned toward the doorway. A man stood there, lean and weathered, his frame outlined by the hallway's light. Master Sergeant James Iron Eyes McCoy. His name carried weight like few others. A living legend. Whispers of Cold War missions still clung to him. Operations no one spoke about openly. McCoy stepped inside with the ease of a man who had nothing to prove. His face bore the map of time, deep lines, a scar tracing from temple to jaw, blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. 3,827 meters, he repeated, his gravel voice steady. "Could you hit it?" The room froze. Everyone knew that number. The longest confirmed sniper kill in history was just over 3,500. What McCoy asked wasn't a challenge. It was an invitation into the impossible. Carter studied him. This wasn't a trap, not a taunt. His question wasn't born of arrogance, it was born of curiosity. "With the right conditions and the right equipment," she said carefully, "anything is theoretically possible." McCoy shook his head. "That's not what I asked. I asked if you could do it." Her silence stretched. 1,000 thoughts ran through her, calculations, memories, doubts. To claim certainty would be arrogance. To claim impossibility would be defeat. "I don't know," she admitted finally. "No one does until they try." McCoy's lips twitched into the faintest shadow of a smile. Good answer. Morrison shifted uncomfortably, bristling at the way the room's attention had been pulled from him. With all due respect, Master Sergeant, this is fantasy. Effective sniping tops out at 2,000 meters, maybe 2,500 with luck. Beyond that, it's not combat, it's myth. McCoy didn't look at him. He kept his gaze fixed on Carter. Finish your maintenance. Meet me in the officers' mess in an hour. Then he turned and walked out, as abrupt as he'd arrived. His departure left a silence so heavy even Morrison didn't feel it immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight, bitter. Don't let that old man fill your head with fantasies, Carter. He's been out too long. This is real life, not Cold War ghost stories. But Carter's mind wasn't on him anymore. McCoy's question stirred something in her, a hunger she thought she'd buried years ago. She reassembled the rifle with practiced hands, each click and twist grounding her. Yet her mind was already elsewhere, already calculating, already imagining the impossible. 3,827 meters. Almost 4 kilometers. A bullet that would take 7 seconds to reach its mark, 7 seconds in which the world could change. She could still hear her father's voice in her memory, gravelly but kind, teaching her how to breathe, how to wait, how to listen to the wind. Promise me, Ashley, promise me you'll become the best. No matter what they tell you, no matter who stands in your way, you have a gift. Don't let them take it from you. She hadn't understood the weight of his words back then. Maybe now she was beginning to. And as she packed her rifle away, she couldn't shake the feeling that McCoy's question wasn't really about distance. It was about her. Could she reach further than anyone dared? Could she see beyond the limits others imposed? Could she prove them all wrong, not with anger, not with pride, but with precision? The hour passed quickly. The officer's mess was quiet when she arrived. McCoy sat alone at a corner table, a cup of black coffee cooling in front of him. Your reputation precedes you, Sergeant Carter, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. They call you the Ghost. Did you know that? She didn't answer. Nicknames didn't matter. Legends were distractions. They say you never miss, that you can do the math faster than computers, that you've dropped targets no one else could even see, but I don't care about stories. He leaned closer, his voice lowering. I care about truth and about what you're willing to do with it. Carter met his gaze, her voice calm. Then why ask me about 3,827 meters? McCoy's eyes sharpened, and for the first time she sensed the depth of what he carried. Because sometimes, he said, the shot isn't about the bullet. It's about the burden of pulling the trigger when no one else can. That's what I need to know about you. Carter said nothing, but in the quiet between them she felt it. Something larger than her career, larger than Morrison's contempt, larger even than her father's ghost. A weight was shifting toward her, and she couldn't yet see its shape. But she knew this much. Her life, her choices, and perhaps much more, were about to be measured not in meters, but in the space between belief and impossibility. And she wasn't sure if she feared that or welcomed it. Why had McCoy chosen her? Ashley Carter asked herself the question as she sat across from him in the mess hall, the hum of the vending machine filling the silence. His eyes, piercing, steady, too sharp for a man his age, never left hers. He wasn't testing her anymore. He was measuring her. Tell me about Montana, McCoy said suddenly. Her brow tightened. What about it? That's where you grew up. Your father, a hunting guide in the Bitterroots, Army Ranger before that. He taught you to shoot when you were, what, 8? Carter's chest tightened. Few people knew those details, and hearing them from McCoy felt like a door opening to a room she hadn't entered in years. You've read my file, she said. I've read more than that. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I know your father was more than a ranger. I know he died when you were 17, and I know it wasn't an accident. The air seemed to still around her. She heard the buzz of the vending machine, the distant scrape of a chair across the floor, but it all blurred under the weight of his words. "What are you saying?" McCoy slid a key across the table. "Training building, see room 237, 1 hour, come alone." Then he stood, nodded once, and walked away, leaving his coffee untouched. Carter stared at the key. Her mind raced. She remembered her father in that hospital bed, pale, blood seeping through bandages after what everyone called a hunting accident. His hand gripping hers, his voice strained but urgent. "Promise me, Ashley, no matter what they tell you, no matter who stands in your way, you have a gift." She had told herself his words were delirium, morphine talking, but what if they were? The key on the table seemed to burn. Room 237 was dark when she unlocked it. Blackout curtains sealed the windows, and the only light came from a projector casting grainy satellite images onto the wall. McCoy stood beside it. Another man sat near the front, Colonel William Hargrove, base commander. His presence told her this was no small matter. "Close the door," Hargrove said. His tone was clipped, formal. "What you're about to hear is classified, top secret. It does not leave this room." Carter obeyed, her pulse quickened. McCoy clicked to the next slide. A technical diagram filled the wall, an advanced rifle system, sleek and unfamiliar. In 1981, McCoy said, DARPA began a classified program, Project Olympus. The goal: create a sniper system capable of eliminating targets at distances no one thought possible. 2,000 meters wasn't enough. We pushed past 2,700. The next slide was a younger McCoy, cold-weather gear on, a rifle cradled in his arms. "I was part of it," he continued. "We proved it could be done, but then came a ghost of our own, Ivan Volkov, former KGB, their best. 32 kills at extreme range. We thought he died in Berlin, 89. He didn't." Another image, Volkov older now. Hard eyes, gray hair, face sharp as broken glass. Hargrove spoke for the first time. "Our intelligence indicates Volkov is alive, training others, equipping them with technology that mirrors Olympus. If he succeeds, the balance shifts. Anyone, anywhere could be eliminated from 4 kilometers away. No warning, no defense." Carter stared at the image. Something in his face unsettled her. "What does this have to do with me?" she asked. McCoy's gaze held hers. "We're reactivating Olympus, and we need an operator with the instincts, the resilience, and the precision to push past every known limit. Every file we pulled led to your name." Her chest tightened. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part, a deeper, buried part, knew this was the reason McCoy had asked his question. "And the 3827 meters?" she asked quietly. Hargrove's voice was blunt. "That's the requirement. Volkov's shooters are reaching it. You'll need to match them or surpass them." Carter leaned back. The number rang in her head like a bell. 3,827 meters. "With respect, sir," she said, "that's beyond the physical limits of ballistics. Bullet drop is measured in dozens of meters. Flight time is 7 seconds. Wind shear, the Coriolis effect, atmospheric distortion." "All things you already accounted for in your head just now," McCoy interrupted, his tone almost amused. Carter said nothing, because he was right. Her mind had been running numbers from the moment the distance was spoken. It wasn't effort, it was instinct. "Why tell me about my father?" she asked finally. McCoy's expression darkened. "Because he wasn't just a ranger. He tracked Volkov in the late 80s, came close to exposing him, too close. The truth is, your father's death matches Volkov's method, a single long-range shot, made to look like an accident." The floor seemed to shift under her. Memories of Montana, her father teaching her to track elk, the smell of pine on his jacket, the way he watched the tree line like it held secrets, crashed against this revelation. "You're saying he was killed," she whispered. "We don't have proof," McCoy said, "but I believe it, and so did your father. His last words weren't confusion, Ashley. They were a warning. For a long moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And then the storm inside her stilled, hardened into something else. Resolve. Then I'll do it, she said. Project Olympus. Whatever it takes, I'm in. Hargrove studied her, his eyes calculating. Understand this, Sergeant. This isn't about revenge. It's about control. You hesitate, people die. Carter's voice was steady, even as her chest burned. I don't operate on emotion, sir. I never have. McCoy's face softened just slightly. Tomorrow morning, range test, be ready, and Carter, he paused, his eyes narrowed. Trust no one, not even me, not completely. The range was cold at dawn. Wind flags snapped in the early light as Carter laid out her rifle, every movement precise. Her M2010 was more than a weapon. It was an extension of her hands, her breath, her pulse. Morrison was already there, surrounded by officers and instructors. He smiled like a wolf seeing prey. Sergeant Carter, he called, today's demonstration will show us the practical limits of female operators. Let's see how far you get before conditions chew you up. She ignored him. Control, always control. McCoy arrived with Hargrove, and a civilian woman Carter recognized from the night before. Dr. Lisa Wong, DARPA scientist. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. The range officer barked commands. Targets at 300, 600, 1,000. Carter worked through them with flawless precision, each shot an echo of discipline. Morrison smirked. Anyone can hit the easy ones. Let's see moving targets. Plates appeared, sliding laterally at 1,200 meters. Carter fired. 10 rounds, 10 hits, 26 seconds. Even Morrison faltered. But he recovered, jaw tight. Fine, real distance. 1,500, 1,750, and 2,000. Let's see if your luck holds. The wind machines roared to life. Flags bent sideways. Heat distortion shimmered across the air. Carter steadied herself. The wind had a rhythm. Her father's voice whispered in memory, the wind has a voice. Listen, Ashley, feel it, not just measure it. Her breath slowed, heart stilled, trigger pulled. One target, then the next, then the last, all center mass. Silence, then murmurs. Even the spotter's voice carried awe. McCoy stepped forward. Exceptional shooting. Morrison's face twisted, his pride unraveling. Lucky gust, he muttered. Wind changed in her favor. Then perhaps, McCoy said mildly, you'd like to demonstrate. Morrison's silence was answer enough. But as the officers dispersed, he leaned close to Carter, voice low, venom sharp. This isn't over. Accidents happen out here, even to naturals. Carter met his stare, calm, steady. What exactly are you afraid of, Colonel? That I'll succeed? For once he had no answer. But as she packed her rifle, a flicker of light caught her eye at the tree line. A glint, quick as a breath, like sunlight on glass. A scope watching. Her gut went cold. And she knew this wasn't over. The game had already begun. Why was the desert so quiet? Too quiet for a place that wasn't supposed to exist. Ashley Carter stood on the tarmac, the Nevada heat already pressing down on her skin, the horizon trembling with mirages. The transport plane that had carried her here was gone, its engines fading into distance, leaving nothing but the whisper of wind and the hum of silence. In front of her, low concrete buildings shimmered behind razor wire, sun-bleached and unmarked. No flags, no insignia, a place stripped of identity, designed to be invisible. Welcome to nowhere, said a voice at her side. Carter turned. Dr. Lisa Wong shaded her eyes against the glare. Unlike the others, Wong wore khaki slacks and a button-up shirt, her calm expression at odds with the heat. Is that the official designation? Carter asked dryly. Wong's lips curved almost into a smile. Officially, this facility doesn't exist. The paperwork calls it a weapons testing range. But the work we do here, very few in the Pentagon know about it. Fewer still understand it. A Humvee rolled toward them, dust trailing behind. Captain Michael Roberts stepped out, lean and hardened, his desert camo blending with the land. His eyes flicked over Carter with a soldier's quick assessment, measuring, weighing, not yet judging. "Gear in the back," he ordered. "We're on a clock." Carter tossed her pack into the Humvee, noticing Morrison at the edge of the group, satellite phone pressed to his ear, voice low. Their eyes met briefly. His expression hardened. He turned away. Whatever game he was playing, it had followed her here. The ride cut across barren land. No one spoke. The compound loomed closer, reinforced buildings, underground bunkers, and range flags stabbing the desert floor. Flags that stretched out far beyond the standard intervals, small specks almost vanishing into heat haze. As they cleared the checkpoint, Carter realized something. Those flags weren't marking practice ranges. They were marking ambition, distances no one had dared to claim. The briefing room hummed with screens, weather patterns scrolled across one monitor, ballistic models across another. At the center, a holographic display rotated slowly, a rifle, sleek and unfamiliar, every line of it humming with precision. McCoy was already there. He gestured toward the hologram. "Project Olympus begins now." Dr. Wang stepped forward, her voice steady. "Conventional wisdom says effective long-range shooting tops out around 3,000 meters. Beyond that, variables multiply too fast. Bullet drop alone becomes 30 meters or more. Add Coriolis effect, barometric shifts, thermal mirage, and you're firing blind." The hologram shifted. It showed wind currents mapped like rivers of invisible force. Bullet arcs bent across terrain. "But what if you didn't fire blind?" Wang continued. "What if your weapon accounted for every variable in real time?" The rifle rotated again, displaying its internals. "This is the XM2030. 15 years of DARPA research. Microprocessor-controlled optics. Integrated LiDAR to map wind at multiple points along the trajectory. A ballistic computer processing 1,000,000 calculations per second, every shot." Morrison scoffed. "So the rifle does all the work. What's the point of the operator?" Wang turned, eyes cool. "The rifle enhances judgment, it doesn't replace it. The machine can calculate, but it can't decide when to wait or when to shoot." McCoy stepped forward. "That's why you're here, Carter. The XM2030 isn't just a tool, it's a test of you." The room was silent. The weight of expectation pressed down like heat. Carter stared at the hologram, mind racing. Data overlays, environmental maps, real-time calculations. It wasn't fantasy, it was an extension of the instincts she had lived by her whole career. And suddenly, the impossible distance of 3,827 meters didn't feel abstract. It felt like a door. Her quarters were sparse. A bed, a desk, a bathroom. No decoration, no softness. Just a space designed for people who had no illusions left. She unpacked methodically, as always. Order was her defense, her way of keeping the world from unraveling. A knock, she opened the door. "McCoy." "Walk with me." The desert dusk had cooled, the sky a wash of purple and orange. McCoy lit a cigar, the smoke curling into the still air. His voice was quiet, gravel rough. "I served with your father," he said. Carter froze. "Grenada, 1983. He pulled me out of an ambush outside Point Salines, saved my life." She swallowed. He had never told her that. "We went separate ways after," McCoy continued. "He came home, raised you, but officially," he shook his head. "He didn't just come home, he became non-official cover, a hunter with clients that weren't always hunters. He tracked men like Volkov." The stars began to appear above them, sharp against desert black. "15 years ago," McCoy said, "he came close, too close. Reported he had proof Volkov was active on U.S. soil. 2 weeks later he was dead, one shot, no casing. The man who called it an accident disappeared. Carter stared out at the horizon, the cool desert air cutting through her. Her father's last words echoed again, clearer now. "Promise me, Ashley, don't let them take it from you." She whispered, "You think Volkov killed him?" McCoy's silence was answer enough. They stood there, the desert stretching endless, until finally Carter spoke. "So this is why you chose me?" "No," McCoy said softly. "I chose you because you don't see impossibility. You see the problem to be solved, but your father, he gave you something more, a conscience. That's rarer than skill." Carter's throat tightened. She forced her voice steady. "Conscience doesn't win wars." McCoy exhaled smoke, eyes narrowing. "Sometimes it does. Sometimes restraint is the only thing that separates us from the men we hunt." Training began before dawn. Captain Roberts met her at the range. The XM-2030 laid out like a promise and a threat. "Forget what you know," he said. "This rifle operates differently. Same fundamentals, but the scope will change everything." Carter peered through the optics. The view wasn't just magnification. It was layered with data, wind speed at multiple points, temperature gradients, humidity shifts, a live map of chaos made legible. It was overwhelming. It was revolutionary. By midday, she was hitting targets at 2,000 meters. By evening, she understood. The rifle wasn't replacing her instincts. It was amplifying them. But Morrison wasn't finished. He cornered her in the cafeteria, dropping his tray with a clang. "Enjoying your new toy?" "It's an impressive system," she replied, voice calm. "It's a crutch," he snapped. "Real snipers don't need computers to hold their hands. They don't hesitate." Carter's eyes flickered. She knew where this was going. "Kandahar, 2011, Morrison said. "You had a shot at a bomb maker. You waited 12 seconds before pulling the trigger. Why?" Carter remembered the boy, small, fragile, the way the target had picked him up without warning. "There was a child," she said. "I waited until he set him down." "You hesitated," Morrison hissed. "And what if those 12 seconds had cost lives? What if he'd spotted you?" "But he didn't," she said simply. "And no one innocent died. Mission accomplished." Morrison leaned closer, eyes sharp with contempt. "Volkov wouldn't have waited. That's the difference between killers like him and technicians like you." Carter's jaw tightened. "If that's your definition of a killer, then you're right. I'm not one, and I don't want to be." Morrison's lips curled, almost satisfied. "And that, Sergeant, is why you'll fail when it matters." He stood, leaving his tray untouched. But Carter didn't move. She sat with the quiet storm inside her. Was he right? Would her restraint cost her when facing someone like Volkov? Or was that restraint the only thing keeping her human? Her answer would come sooner than she expected. Because that night McCoy summoned her to a facility built into the mesa's side. Guards checked her ID. Biometric scanners buzzed. Inside, a massive screen covered the far wall. The floor shifted beneath her boots, mounted on hydraulics. "The Hades system," McCoy said. "High-fidelity adaptive dynamic environment simulator. It doesn't just show targets, it recreates them. Wind, temperature, mirage, everything." He gestured toward the XM-2030. "Let's see what you can really do." The screen flickered alive. A mountain range stretched before her, the Hindu Kush. A target moved between buildings, distant, small. 2,600 meters, McCoy said. But what if it were 3,800? The scene shifted, pulling back, stretching the distance into the impossible. Carter settled behind the rifle. Breath slowed, heart stilled, the world narrowed. She fired, 7 seconds of silence. Then the target fell. "Hit," the system confirmed. McCoy's eyes lingered on her. His voice was low. "Most operators miss their first attempt. You didn't." But Carter wasn't listening. Her hands rested on the rifle, her eyes still fixed on the distance. Because she knew. This wasn't just training. This was preparation for something coming fast. Something she wasn't ready for yet. Why did the shot feel wrong when she had done everything right? Ashley Carter lay prone in the desert, the XM2030 pressed against her shoulder, her eyes steady on the scope. The wind data scrolled across the lens, calculations humming silently in the rifle's core. She had timed it perfectly, every factor aligned, every breath calibrated. Yet as the target dropped at 2,900 meters, something inside her told her it hadn't been her bullet that hit. She glanced at the spotting scope beside her. McCoy leaned down, scanning, his scarred face still. "You feel that?" he asked quietly. Carter frowned. It was clean, but not yours," McCoy finished. He pulled away from the scope, his gaze turned toward the ridge. "We're not alone." A dust plume rippled faintly at the horizon, the shimmer of glass in sunlight. A rifle. Carter's gut tightened, that same glint she'd seen at the Montana range. Someone was shadowing them. McCoy's voice lowered, steady but edged. "Volkov's people testing us, watching how far we've come." She exhaled slowly, her heart steadying. If they were here, this wasn't just training anymore. This was already war. The next day, Hargrove doubled security. But Morrison seized the moment, striding into the command center with barely concealed satisfaction. "This is what happens when you put a woman in the crosshairs," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "She freezes, she hesitates, she feels." Carter didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the weather maps scrolling across the monitors. "Careful, Colonel," McCoy said, voice sharp as flint. "You're mistaking restraint for weakness, again." Morrison smirked. "Restraint won't save us from Volkov. Ruthlessness will, but she doesn't have it." He jabbed a finger toward Carter. "When the time comes, she won't pull the trigger." The room chilled. Even Hargrove's silence carried judgment. Carter finally turned, her voice calm. "You're wrong. I'll pull the trigger, but only when the shot means something. Killing isn't the same as winning." Morrison's lip curled. "Try telling that to the families who bury their dead while you wait." For a moment, no one moved. The tension was a wire stretched to breaking. Then McCoy stepped in, his gravel voice steady. "Enough. Tomorrow she proves it. Live fire exercise, no simulations, no second chances." His eyes met Carter's, and for the first time she saw the weight behind them. This wasn't a drill, this was a crucible. The desert night was a world of silence. Carter lay in her bunk, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The words echoed in her mind, Morrison's accusations, McCoy's challenge, her father's last warning. "No matter who stands in your way." The weight of expectation pressed against her chest, heavier than the desert heat. She wasn't afraid of failing herself. She was afraid of proving Morrison right, afraid that her conscience, the part of her that still hesitated, would break her when the mission mattered most. She turned her head. On the desk sat the XM2030 scope, detached, its glass catching faint moonlight. She lifted it, stared through it at nothing. For a heartbeat, she saw her father's face reflected back. And she wondered, was restraint her curse or her salvation? The live fire test began at dawn. Targets moved across the desert floor, armored mannequins simulating combatants, their patterns erratic, their ranges stretching beyond 3,000 meters. The sun was already rising, heat waves distorting the air. Roberts called the commands. "Target 1, 2,400 meters, go." Carter's breath slowed, trigger pressed, impact, target dropped. "Target 2, 2,800, moving, go." She adjusted for wind shear, compensated for mirage, fired, hit. The range grew harsher, 3,200 meters, then 3,600, then the final, near-mythical mark, 3,827. The target was barely visible, a shifting blur in the shimmer. Carter stilled her breath. Her mind narrowed, time slowed. 7 seconds of silence stretched. Impact, direct hit. The range officer confirmed, disbelief in his voice. Target down, confirmed. The silence that followed was thicker than applause. Even the skeptics couldn't speak. But Morrison wasn't finished. He stepped forward, voice sharp. She did it, with DARPA's toy feeding her data. Strip away the machine and she's just another operator with a conscience. You want to put Olympus in her hands, then test her under fire. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. Explain. Bring the target to her, Morrison said. A moving convoy, multiple civilians in the area, real ambiguity. Let's see if she pulls the trigger then. Carter's jaw tightened. She knew what he was doing, setting her up to fail, to prove his narrative. McCoy cut in, voice low but firm. Enough games, Colonel. But Hargrove didn't shut it down. He considered it, and then slowly he nodded. Carter felt the shift. The test wasn't about skill anymore. It was about morality, about hesitation. And Morrison had just stacked the deck. The convoy rolled out the next day. Unmarked vehicles, a desert road cutting through open land. Drone feeds projected onto the command screens. Carter lay prone on the ridge, XM-2030 steady, eyes on the convoy. Her headset buzzed with Robert's voice. Rules of engagement, hostile vehicle is the black SUV. Civilian trucks intermixed. Confirm before firing. Time window 30 seconds. The SUV came into view, shielded between two civilian vans. The target was inside, but so were innocents, barely meters away. The scope streamed data, wind, distance, trajectory. It told her the shot was possible, but not clean. Her finger hovered. Morrison's voice cut in over comms, sharp, demanding. Take the shot, Sergeant. Do it now. Her breath stilled. The boy in Kandahar flashed in her memory, the weight of her father's words, McCoy's warning. She saw the shot, and she saw the aftermath. 7 seconds of flight. 7 seconds for a child to lean out a window, for a mother to stand, for innocence to be erased by her bullet. She didn't fire. Time up, Roberts called. The convoy passed beyond range. Silence filled the ridge. Then Morrison's voice crackled, triumphant. Hesitation. Again, she failed. Carter lowered the rifle, her hands steady even as her chest burned. She had known this would happen, known he would use her conscience against her. But when she returned to the command post, McCoy was waiting. You didn't fail, he said quietly, pulling her aside. You passed the only test that matters, knowing when not to shoot. She met his eyes, searching for certainty. Then why does it feel like I just lost everything? His expression was heavy, worn by years of choices that left scars deeper than bullets. Because the right choice rarely feels like victory, he said. It feels like doubt, and you carry it forever. That night Carter sat alone, the desert stretching black and infinite beyond the perimeter lights. The stars above seemed endless, indifferent. She thought of the convoy, the crosshairs steady on the SUV, the choice not to pull the trigger. Morrison would call it weakness, others might call it failure. But deep down she knew. Killing wasn't the measure, control was, and control wasn't about hitting 3,827 meters. It was about resisting the voice that told her she had to prove herself by blood. Still, a question gnawed at her. What if next time, hesitation cost more than it saved? What if Morrison was right? And in the silence, with only the desert wind for company, Ashley Carter realized something. The greater test was not the shot itself. It was carrying the weight of choosing when the world demanded absolutes. And the world was about to demand it again. Why did the air in the C-17 feel heavier than the desert nights had? Ashley Carter sat buckled into the jump seat, helmet in her lap, rifle case secured between her boots. The steady drone of engines filled the cargo hold, masking every thought but the loudest ones. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. Across from her sat Captain Roberts, his expression taut, every line of his face betraying what he wouldn't say aloud. Beside him, McCoy leaned against the bulkhead, eyes closed as if asleep. But Carter knew better. McCoy never slept when it mattered. And Morrison, he was here too, pretending to review mission briefs, though his eyes strayed to her again and again, carrying the same contempt he'd worn since the first day. "Target is Volkov's outpost," Roberts said finally, raising his voice above the engines. "Northern Syria, high-value assets moving through. Intelligence suggests Volkov himself may be there. Our job is to confirm and eliminate if possible." The word eliminate landed heavy. It wasn't theory anymore. It was the mission. Roberts continued. "Local civilians are present. Farmers, families, collateral risk is high. That's why Olympus is in play. Precision where drones and airstrikes would fail. One shot instead of 20. All eyes shifted to Carter. Her chest tightened, but her voice was steady. "What's my role?" Roberts didn't hesitate. "You're our scalpel. You'll take the high ground 2 clicks from the compound. If Volkov shows, you'll have the shot. No one else gets near him." McCoy's eyes opened, his voice gravel. "But remember, Carter, if you miss, or worse, if you take the shot at the wrong time, it's not just the mission that fails. Innocents die. Understand?" She nodded. She understood all too well. Morrison's smirk was faint but sharp as glass. "That's assuming she doesn't freeze again." Carter didn't rise to the bait. She stared at the floor, her father's voice whispering in memory, "Don't let them take it from you." They moved under cover of night. The desert wind howled, whipping sand across the barren ground. Carter climbed the ridge with Roberts beside her, McCoy watching their six. The weight of the XM-2030 pressed against her shoulder like a reminder of everything that waited in the dark. At the crest, she dropped prone, unfolding the bipod, locking the rifle into position. Through the scope, the compound came alive, heat signatures moving between buildings, sentries patrolling with practiced precision. Wang's voice buzzed in her ear, linked from the command post thousands of miles away. "Optics calibrated, wind mapping engaged. You're clear to acquire targets." Carter exhaled, steady, calm. The scope fed her numbers, angles, humidity, barometric shifts, but beneath the data her instincts hummed. She didn't just see numbers, she felt them. Roberts lay beside her, spotting scope aligned. "Target acquired, black SUV, that's Volkov's vehicle." Movement. A tall figure stepped from the SUV, guarded by armed men. Even at this distance, Carter felt the shift. His presence was heavier than the desert air. "Volkov." Her heart stilled, her breath slowed. This was it. "Range 3,400 meters, Roberts whispered. "You have the shot." Her finger brushed the trigger. The world narrowed to a single point. And then she saw it. 2 children darting across the courtyard, chasing a ball. Her chest tightened. "Take the shot." Morrison's voice crackled over comms, sharp, commanding. Carter's breath caught, her finger froze. 7 seconds of flight. 7 seconds for those children to stray into the path. Her jaw locked. Negative, civilians in proximity. Morrison's snarl cut through the headset. "You'll never get this chance again. Do it now." McCoy's voice followed, calm but edged with steel. "Hold your fire, trust your instinct." The courtyard shifted. The children vanished into the shadows. Volkov moved further into the open, laughing at something his guard said. The window was back, clear. Carter's breath slowed, the world stilled. She fired. 7 seconds stretched, an eternity. Impact. The guard beside Volkov dropped. Volkov himself flinched, startled, but untouched. "Missed," Roberts muttered. "No," Carter said, her voice tight. "He moved." Through the scope, chaos erupted. Guards dragged Volkov into cover. Alarms blared across the compound. The shot had been perfect, but Volkov hadn't been still. "Mission compromised," Roberts snapped. "We're exfiltrating now." They moved fast, but Morrison's voice hissed in her ear as they pulled back. "You hesitated, again, and now he's gone." But Carter wasn't listening. Her hands were steady on the rifle. Her mind, though, was storming. Because as Volkov disappeared into the compound, she had seen his face. And for a heartbeat, a terrifying heartbeat, she thought he had looked directly at her. Back at base, the debrief was brutal. Hargrove's tone was clipped, controlled anger beneath every word. "We had him, years of intelligence, resources, and he slipped because of hesitation, again." Carter stood silent. Morrison seized the opening. "Sir, I've said it from the beginning. She's not ruthless enough. She second-guesses, she waits, she lets targets slip away. Olympus deserves an operator who knows when to pull the trigger without conscience tying their hands." Hargrove's eyes flicked to McCoy. "And your opinion?" McCoy's jaw flexed, the scar on his face deepening. "She made the right call. Children were in the line. Killing isn't the same as victory." "Tell that to the men Volkov will kill tomorrow," Morrison snapped. The room split in silence. Carter felt the weight pressing from both sides, but she said nothing. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was endurance. But as the debrief ended, McCoy caught her arm. His voice was low. "You hit exactly where you aimed. That wasn't a miss. That was Volkov moving a half-second early. He knew." Her blood ran cold. "You're saying he saw me?" McCoy's eyes narrowed. "I'm saying he expected you." That night Carter sat alone in her quarters. The XM2030 disassembled across her desk. Her hands moved through the motions, cleaning, checking, reassembling, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the image of Volkov's eyes, the way they seemed to pierce across kilometers of desert. And deeper still, the thought she couldn't silence. What if he hadn't just expected her? What if someone had told him? She thought of the glint on the ridge during training, of Morrison's whispered threats, of the venom in his voice every time he said she'd fail. "Trust no one," McCoy had said, "not even me." Her hands stilled. Something was wrong. The next day, orders came fast. Volkov was on the move. New intel suggested he was crossing into Turkey, escorted by a convoy under heavy guard. This was the moment. Roberts outlined the plan. Carter would take a high ridge overlooking the border pass. Volkov's SUV would appear within range for less than 2 minutes. It was a narrow window, their last chance. Carter listened, every nerve on edge. She felt the storm building, a weight she couldn't name. As they moved out, McCoy walked beside her. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "remember, it's not the distance that matters, it's the choice." She nodded, but inside doubt gnawed. Because she knew. This wasn't just about Volkov anymore. This was about the shadows moving inside her own team. And as they set up on the ridge, her rifle steady on the bipod, she couldn't silence the thought. Someone didn't want her to succeed. And she was about to find out who. Why did the ridge feel colder than the night itself? Ashley Carter lay prone, the XM2030 anchored to stone, the desert wind whispering across her cheek. Below, the border pass carved a narrow scar through mountains, headlights weaving slowly up its bends. The convoy was coming. Her eyes stayed on the scope. Numbers streamed across the glass, wind, pressure, humidity. Yet she felt every factor as much as she read it. Her instincts hummed with the rhythm of the terrain. Behind her, Roberts checked comms. McCoy scanned the horizon with binoculars. Morrison paced, restless, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, venomous line. The headset crackled. Command's voice, "Target vehicle confirmed, black SUV. Range will open in 90 seconds. Sergeant Carter, this is your window." Her pulse steadied, breath slowed. Through the scope the convoy appeared, 6 vehicles, headlights piercing the mountain dark. Civilians in trucks, guards in armored pickups. And there, the black SUV. "Range, 3,640 meters," Roberts whispered. Steady. Carter's crosshairs tracked the SUV. It bounced slightly on uneven road, guards bristling around it like armor. She adjusted, compensated. The world stilled. Then her scope flashed. A burst of static cut across her optic feed. The numbers glitched. Wind vectors vanished. "What the hell?" Wang's voice cut through the comms. "I'm losing telemetry. Someone's jamming the system." Carter blinked, her scope blind to half its data. Morrison's voice was immediate, sharp. "Fire, now, before you lose the shot." Her jaw tightened. She couldn't. Not blind, not with civilians inches from her line. McCoy's gravel voice snapped across comms. "Hold, breathe, trust yourself, Carter." The SUV neared the kill zone. Her instincts screamed. Something was wrong. And then she saw it. A child's face, pale in the headlights of the civilian truck beside the SUV, leaning out of the window, looking up at the ridge. Her chest clenched. If she fired blind, even a fraction off, that bullet would rip through innocence. "Fire," Morrison roared again. "Negative," Carter said, voice steady, her finger frozen above the trigger. The SUV veered suddenly, swerving closer to the civilian truck. And in that blur of motion, Carter saw something no data feed could show, a reflection, a glint of glass on the SUV's windshield. Her gut knew Volkov wasn't inside. "He's not there," she whispered. Roberts frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Decoy," she said. "It's a trap." Seconds later, gunfire erupted from the mountainside opposite. A second convoy hidden in darkness lit up the pass with tracer rounds, shredding through the civilian vehicles. Screams filled the comms. "Ambush," Roberts barked. The ridge exploded with chaos. Bullets cracked against stone. Shouts tore through the comms. Carter dropped her cheek against the stock, scanning. And then she saw him. Across the pass on a parallel ridge, a figure prone, rifle glinting in faint starlight. Volkov. Her breath stilled. "Range, 3,827 meters, McCoy's voice rasped. The impossible number. The number that had haunted her since the armory. This was it. She steadied, adjusted for the raw wind, felt the currents like her father had taught her, not measured, not calculated, felt. Volkov's scope glinted. She knew his target, Roberts. 7 seconds, that's all she had. "Take it, Carter," McCoy said. Her finger pressed, the world slowed. Her bullet leapt into night. 7 seconds of silence, 7 seconds of doubt, 7 seconds of everything she was and everything she feared. Through her scope, she saw Volkov shift, his finger tightening on the trigger. Then his head snapped back, his rifle fell, his body slumped. Impact direct. "Target down," Roberts breathed. But Carter didn't exhale, not yet. Because something in her gut twisted. Volkov was dead. She'd done the impossible. And yet, why did it feel like this wasn't victory? They exfiltrated fast. The ambush had cost lives, civilians caught in crossfire. Carter's stomach turned as she boarded the helo, the screams still echoing in her ears. In the dim red light of the cabin, McCoy sat across from her, eyes sharp but unreadable. "You did it," he said simply. Her voice was flat. "At what cost?" "War always has a cost." She stared at him, jaw clenched. "Children died, I saw their faces, and Morrison." She stopped, the word lodged in her throat. McCoy leaned closer, voice low. "Say it." She met his gaze. "Someone jammed my scope on our side. He wanted me blind. He wanted me to fire anyway." McCoy didn't deny it. His silence said enough. "Why?" she demanded. "Because some people measure strength by blood, and some men would rather see you fail than see you prove them wrong." Her chest tightened. "Morrison." McCoy didn't speak, but his eyes gave her the truth. The debrief was chaos. Command celebrated Volkov's death. Pentagon brass called it a turning point. Hargrove declared Olympus a success. Morrison, though, stood silent in the corner, eyes locked on Carter, not with defeat, not with rage, with calculation. She felt it. His silence was heavier than his insults had ever been. That night Carter stood alone outside the barracks, rifle across her chest. The desert air was cool, stars scattered above like fragments of something broken. Her mind replayed the shot again and again. The 7 seconds, the children's faces, the reflection in the glass. She had killed Volkov, but she hadn't killed doubt. McCoy's voice drifted from the shadows behind her. You did what no one else could. That shot will be remembered. She didn't turn. Remembered doesn't mean right. He stepped closer, cigar ember glowing faintly. Right is a luxury. Necessary is what keeps people alive. Her jaw tightened. Then what does that make me? A necessary evil. McCoy exhaled smoke. No, it makes you human, and that's rarer than you think. Silence settled between them, heavy, unspoken. But in Carter's chest, one truth had crystallized. This wasn't over. Volkov was gone, but Morrison was still here. And Morrison was more dangerous than any enemy she could see through a scope. Why did silence feel sharper than bullets? The briefing room was full, but no one spoke. Screens glowed with satellite imagery, forests in Eastern Europe, black ridges cutting across the landscape, heat signatures like ghosts on the map. Yet the air was still, heavy, waiting. Ashley Carter sat at the edge of the table, rifle case by her side. Across from her, Morrison leaned back in his chair, hands clasped loosely, eyes fixed on her like a predator waiting for movement. Hargrove cleared his throat. Volkov is dead, but his network is. Our intel indicates one of his lieutenants, Dmitry Koval, has taken command. He's relocating assets, consolidating power. If he succeeds, we're back where we started. The screen shifted. A convoy moving through pine forests, heat signatures flickering in and out under canopy. Our window is small, Roberts said. A strike team will intercept. Sergeant Carter, you'll provide overwatch. This mission depends on your precision. Carter nodded. She said nothing. McCoy's eyes flicked toward her, silent reassurance, but she noticed something else. Morrison's lips curled faintly, not triumph, not malice. Expectation. And it chilled her more than the forest air would. The insertion was quiet. Pine needles crunched beneath boots, the air damp with moss and earth. Carter climbed the ridge, settling into her position as the strike team moved below. Her scope swept the trees, dark, endless, hiding everything and nothing at once. Eyes on convoy, Robert's voice crackled. Stand by. Carter adjusted, breath steady. Then static, a faint distortion flickered across her optics. Not a full blackout this time. Subtler, a delay in wind mapping, fractions of seconds off. Her gut tightened. Morrison, check comms, she whispered. Comms are clean, Morrison replied from his own position on the ridge. His voice was smooth, too smooth. Her scope cleared, numbers steadied, almost as if the glitch had never happened. Below, the convoy appeared. Koval's guards, vehicles rolling slow through the mud. Civilians again, farmers, families, walking the roadside. And then gunfire. The forest erupted. Explosions tore through the path. The strike team scattered for cover. Ambush, Roberts barked. Carter's scope swept. Shapes emerged from the tree line, hostiles, rifles flashing. She fired. One fell, another, precision cutting chaos. But something was wrong. She tracked one figure, Koval, unmistakable, his coat dark against the green. Her crosshairs settled, finger tightened. And then she heard it. Do it, Morrison's voice hissed in her ear. But his tone was wrong, too eager. She hesitated, just a breath. And in that breath, Koval ducked into cover, gone. Gunfire thundered. The strike team fought to hold ground. Carter picked off targets, but her mind burned. That hesitation, it wasn't doubt. It was recognition. Because the voice in her ear hadn't been an order, It had been a trap. After the firefight, the forest reeked of smoke and blood. The team pulled back, battered but alive. Koval was gone. The debrief was brutal. Hargrove's tone was clipped steel. Once again, hesitation cost us. Koval slipped. Volkov's death meant nothing if his second takes the throne. Morrison leaned forward, voice calm, almost sympathetic. "Sir, I warned you. She's too cautious, too bound by her conscience. Olympus needs someone decisive." Hargrove's eyes hardened. "Perhaps you're right." McCoy's jaw clenched, his voice gravel. "With respect, sir, that's exactly what Volkov wanted us to believe. You put the wrong man behind Olympus, and you'll create Volkov's ghost all over again." The room split. Commanders exchanged looks. Wang's gaze lingered on Carter, unreadable. And Carter sat silent, because inside her, the truth was louder than their voices. The sabotage wasn't Shadow anymore. It was Morrison. She remembered the glitch, the push to fire, the too smooth denial. And she realized this wasn't incompetence. This was intent. But she couldn't speak it. Not yet, not without proof. That night Carter sat in the armory, stripping her rifle down to bare steel. Her hands moved mechanically, but her mind burned. Morrison was trying to break her, or worse, frame her. She thought of her father, of McCoy's warning, "Trust no one, not even me." The doubt cut deeper than the silence ever had. She heard the door creak. McCoy stepped in, closing it behind him. His face was drawn, eyes shadowed. "You know it's him," he said quietly. Carter didn't look up. "I can't prove it." "You don't need proof to feel the knife at your back." She set the bolt aside, meeting his gaze finally. "Then why isn't anyone stopping him?" McCoy exhaled, smoke curling from the cigar between his fingers. "Because men like Morrison know how to wear loyalty like armor. Command sees a soldier. They don't see the cracks." Her jaw tightened. "So what do I do?" His eyes narrowed. "You endure. You survive. And when the moment comes, you decide if you're willing to pull the trigger not just on an enemy, but on the man standing beside you." The weight of his words landed heavy. She swallowed hard. "Would you?" she asked. McCoy's silence was answer enough. The next mission came fast, too fast. Intel claimed Koval was regrouping in an abandoned airfield. Command insisted it was their chance to cut the snake before it grew a new head. But Carter felt it in her gut. The timing was wrong, too convenient. Still, orders were orders. They deployed at dawn, the forest shrouded in mist. Carter took the hangar roof, rifle steady, scope sweeping the field. The strike team advanced below, shadows in the fog. And then her scope flashed red. Target acquired, Koval, standing in the open, unguarded, too perfect. Her instinct screamed, "It's a setup." Morrison's voice cut through her comms, sharp, commanding, "Take the shot, Carter, now." She froze. McCoy's voice followed, low, urgent, "Wait, something's wrong." Her chest tightened, crosshairs on Koval's head, finger on the trigger, two voices pulling her in opposite directions. One promising victory, the other warning of a trap. And in that moment, Ashley Carter faced the heaviest choice of her life. If she fired, she might kill Koval, or she might kill an innocent, or worse, prove Morrison right, handing him the power to bury her. If she held, she risked losing everything, again. The silence stretched, her breath caught. And somewhere in the mist she thought she saw movement, a glint, a second scope. Someone else was aiming, not at Koval, at her. Why did time slow when a rifle was pointed at you? Ashley Carter lay flat against the hangar roof, the XM-2030 pressed to her shoulder, crosshairs steady on Koval's face. Through the mist, a second glint burned into her periphery, a rival scope, aimed not at the target but at her. Her chest tightened. She wasn't the hunter anymore, she was prey. "Take the shot, Carter," Morrison barked in her ear, venom barely masked as authority. But McCoy's gravel voice cut in, urgent, Don't, not yet, feel it. Her breath stilled. She tracked both sights at once, her own scope on Koval, the rival glint flickering against fog. If she pulled the trigger, she'd reveal her position. The second shooter would fire. And Carter realized with a jolt, Morrison wanted exactly that. Her finger hovered. She whispered into comms, "I'm being painted, counter-sniper East Ridge." Robert's voice snapped back, "We can't see him, Carter, confirm." She shifted fractionally. There, a faint silhouette against the tree line, rifle prone, patient, professional. Not just a sniper, one of Volkov. Her gut twisted. The ghost wasn't dead after all. And in that breath of recognition, the rival muzzle flashed. Carter rolled. A bullet sliced stone where her skull had been. "Contact," she barked. The rooftop erupted. Bullets cracked against concrete, shattering fragments across her arms. She dropped low, heart pounding, hands moving fast. The XM-2030 swung to the East Ridge, optics wide. There the rival sniper, faint, barely visible. Her breath steadied. She fired. 7 seconds stretched. Impact, the rival crumpled. The mist echoed silence again. But Koval was gone, slipped into shadows in the chaos. "Target escaped," Roberts growled. And Morrison's voice hissed through comms, every word dripping poison, because she hesitated, again. Back at base, the debrief was fire and ice. Command demanded answers. Hargrove's tone cut sharp. "You had Koval in your sights. You didn't fire." Carter stood rigid. Because it was a trap, he wasn't exposed by mistake. The real threat was the sniper painting me. If I'd fired, I'd be dead. Morrison slammed a fist on the table. "Excuses. She's making excuses. We had Koval, and she let him walk." Her jaw tightened. "Sir, I neutralized the counter-sniper. Without that, none of us would have left that field alive." But Hargrove's silence was heavy, doubt already seated. McCoy spoke, gravel steady. "She made the right call. Koval was bait. That shot wasn't meant to be taken. It was meant to expose her." Morrison leaned forward, eyes cold. "And yet Volkov's network grows stronger because she chose not to act. How many more lives will that hesitation cost?" The room fractured. Commanders exchanged looks. Wang shifted uneasily, her gaze flicking between Carter and Morrison. And in the silence, Carter felt it. Morrison was winning. Not with proof, but with poison. Later, alone in the armory, Carter's hands trembled for the first time in years. The rifle lay disassembled before her. She stared at its parts, at the weapon that had become both her salvation and her curse. Hesitation. The word echoed like a blade in her chest. Was Morrison right? Was she too bound by conscience to win wars? She thought of the children in Kandahar, the convoy in Syria, the farmers in the forest. Every moment she had waited, every second she had chosen not to fire. And yet her father's voice returned, steady, unshaken. "Control, Ashley, always control. A rifle isn't just a weapon, it's a mirror. It shows who you are when no one else can see." Her eyes burned, her hands stilled. She knew who she was. The truth came sooner than she expected. Wang found her at dawn, pulling her aside, voice urgent. "I traced the telemetry disruption. It didn't come from Volkov's side. It originated here, from Morrison's uplink." Carter's stomach dropped. "He's been feeding false data into the system," Wang continued. "Delays, jamming, interference. Enough to push you into failure. Enough to make command doubt you." Proof at last. Carter clenched her fists. Rage surged, but colder than fire, controlled. "What do we do?" Wang asked. Carter's voice was calm. "We wait, and when he tries again, we catch him in the act." The chance came on the final mission. Koval had surfaced in Ukraine, moving weapons across the border. Olympus was greenlit for one last strike. Carter climbed the ridge with McCoy at her side. Morrison followed, silent but sharp, his presence like a knife at her back. The convoy appeared below, armored trucks crawling across frozen ground. Civilians again, always civilians. Her scope lit up, numbers streamed, data perfect, too perfect. Her gut tightened. "It's being spoofed," she whispered. McCoy's eyes flicked to her, then to Morrison. "Do you trust it?" "No," she said. Morrison's voice cut in sharp. "Take the shot, Sergeant, now." Her finger hovered. She exhaled slowly, then she spoke. "You take it, Colonel." The silence cracked. Morrison stiffened. "What?" She turned her head, meeting his eyes. Calm, steady. "You've doubted me from the start. You think I hesitate. Prove me wrong, take the shot." All eyes shifted. Wang's voice crackled faint over comms. "Do it, let's see." For the first time, Morrison faltered. His jaw clenched, his hand twitched. And Carter saw it, the flicker of panic. Because he couldn't. He hadn't trained for the distance. He hadn't lived with restraint. He only knew how to order death, not to shoulder it. McCoy's voice rasped, low but cutting. "You sabotaged her, you fed false data, and now you're caught." Morrison's face twisted. "Lies, she's lying." But Wang's feed cut in, cold and final. "Telemetry confirms. Disruptions traced directly to Morrison's uplink. It's over, Colonel." The silence was thunder. Morrison's hand twitched toward his sidearm. Too slow. McCoy's pistol was already drawn, barrel steady. "Don't," McCoy said. Morrison froze. Carter watched him, her breath steady. "You wanted to prove I couldn't pull the trigger when it mattered. But here's the truth. Sometimes the strongest trigger pull is the one you don't make." Her words hung in the cold air. Morrison's eyes burned, but he said nothing. Guards arrived minutes later. They took him in silence. The mission continued. Carter shifted back to her rifle. Her hands were steady, her breath calm. Through the scope, she saw Koval's convoy. No sabotage, no false data, only her and the shot. She exhaled, the world stilled. "Impact direct." "Target down," Roberts confirmed. But Carter didn't smile, didn't cheer. She lowered the rifle, eyes heavy. Because victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like survival. Back at base, the reports poured in. Olympus was hailed as a success. Command lauded Carter's precision. The impossible distance had been proven. But she knew. The real battle hadn't been with Volkov or Koval. It had been with herself. With hesitation, with conscience, with the question of what a trigger meant when a human soul stood behind it. That night Carter sat alone under the stars, rifle across her lap. The desert stretched endless and quiet. McCoy found her there, settling beside her in silence. Finally he spoke. "You carried the burden well." Her voice was soft. "It doesn't feel like victory." He nodded. "It never does, but that's the point. The ones who feel nothing, those are the dangerous ones." She looked at the rifle, then at the horizon. "So what am I now?" McCoy's eyes lingered on her. "You're human, and that's enough." They sat in silence. The stars above were endless, indifferent. And Carter understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.